I'd like to introduce Scott Tinker, Dr. Scott Tinker. He is Centralia born. Many people may not be aware of that. He works to bring industry, government, academia, and non-governmental organizations together to address major societal challenges in energy and the environment and the economy. He is the host of Energy Switch on PBS. You must watch this show. He'll talk about it, I'm sure. He is the chairman of the Switch Energy Alliance. He co-produced and is featured in the award-winning documentary Switch and Switch On. He is the state geologist of Texas. He's the director of the 250-person Bureau of Economic Geology. He's a professor holding the all-day endowed chair at the Jackson School of Geosciences at the University of Texas in Austin. He's got a pretty good resume. And perhaps most importantly, he's one of the most respected and credible voices globally in the energy space and the energy transition debate, which is why he's here today. Ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Scott Tinker.
Thanks, Seth. I didn't write the last line about the most respected part, so thanks for throwing that in. It's good to be back home. Didn't live in Centralia very long. Dad was Shale. He was a geologist, and we moved in those years. Started in the Illinois Basin, we moved to the DJ Basin, then the Anadarko, then the Gulf Basin, back to the DJ, and back to the Gulf Basin, and then my wife and I moved to Michigan Basin, and then Colorado, blah, blah. So I keep track of where I live by basins, not by states. Anyway, it's great to see you all tonight. We got some teachers here. Put up your hands. Let me see where you are. All right. It's good you're all sitting at the front. These are the A students. I'll be talking to you and probably challenge you a little bit, our thinking. That's the goal, challenge all of us to think critically here, and that's what I'm trying to do. So I'm going to start with some philosophy to wake you right up. Mark of an educated mind to be able to entertain a thought without accepting it. Wouldn't that be nice, right? Can't we just entertain some thoughts? You don't have to accept everything I say, but let's talk. Let's have some civil dialogue. And it's really important, and we're losing that a little bit these days, so let's bring it back. I got some themes that'll come throughout this presentation for you. Energy is vital for everything that humans do. It allows us to flourish. All forms have pros and cons, all of them. There's nothing that doesn't. And secure energy drives all decisions in the world. Okay. So we'll talk about these things. You'll see them as they come by. We'll start with some global context. My other favorite philosopher, Yogi Berra. If the world was perfect, it wouldn't be. We know that. Not a perfect world. We don't live in a perfect world, so that's the one we deal with. I have my own axiom. Most people don't know how gasoline's made or where electricity comes from. But they think they do. And they vote. All right? So out we go voting with all of our deep energy knowledge. We're all energy experts. And it's fun, and so I love young people, and here's one getting on an airplane Southwest with a backpack, says, people versus fossil fuels, right on the backpack. And I love the passion, I really do love the passion. But let's put it where our feet are. Let's walk, don't fly. Not flying on batteries, right? And this is what I call energy irony. And I have lots of examples. We can talk about them during discussion, and I'll bring them up. A lot of energy irony in the world and our passion for it. So the ternary diagram, geologists, how many geoscientists in the room? All in the back, C students, I love you. I'm back there with you, the D row. But everything on a triangle diagram has to sum to 100%. It fits in there, that's how those work. So if you think about energy security, reliable energy, we like it reliable. Economic security, affordable. Climate security, low emissions. I don't use the word clean very often. It has kind of become meaningless. It means different things to different people, but I try to be specific. Low emissions, get the emissions down. If you want 100% low emissions, you get zip of everything else, right, on a ternary diagram. There are trade-offs. And this is one of the great challenges in this world, is these trade-offs that exist between these big areas that we work on and study. I call it the radical middle. It's radically lonely most of the time, but we're growing. This is that overlap space where we try to think critically and have civil dialogue. You can think of it this way. Energy security underpins economic security. All the major global economies in the world that are healthy have reasonably secure energy. Okay? And that allows us to do what? Invest in the environment. It allows us to protect the environment. I'll show you examples and data about this. And it flows this way. You can't skip the economy, all right? And you're welcome to take notes, but at the end, I'm going to give you an assignment. I'm going to tell you most of these slides, almost all of them, I've put online, animated with my voice on them, and you can have them, okay, with all their references. So that's the radical middle at work. And let's just take a little waltz around the world here for 8 years. We start pre-Paris and kind of talking about economic security, and Paris pulled us toward climate, right? The Paris Accords. And COVID said, no, come on back. It's about, let's talk about the economy. We're shutting it down to keep ourselves safe globally. A lot of impacts from that. And then the net zero emissions dialogues began coming out of Europe back toward climate. And then the big conference of the parties. This is the big climate conference that happens every year. The Davos of climate, okay. It pulled us way toward climate in Glasgow. And Mr. Putin said, no. I'm going into Ukraine. I'm going to weaponize energy. Cut off the gas, attack nuclear and other power plants. We're going to weaponize energy. And that made energy security the topic on every leader's lips. It always is, by the way. But now they were saying it publicly. And then along comes COP27 in Egypt, and African nations spoke with one voice there. They said, look, oil and gas is going to lift us out of poverty. It did you, and we're going to use it. South Africa beats climate goal as blackouts slash emissions. You can't make this up. Blackouts, sure, Africans can't turn their lights or refrigerate their food, but let's look at the bright side. They're beating their climate goals. Some people are celebrating this, not the South Africans. Okay. And then Germany goes into a recession just about a month ago. No surprise to anyone when you think about what's been happening in Europe. And we'll look at some data there. So this is kind of the waltz around the radical middle that we've been seeing, and eventually we might get into it. And that's kind of our outline tonight. So let's start with economic security. Everything in our lives depends on energy. Everything. Now this was hard to do. This is your Dr. Seuss moment. So when I'm finished, if you spontaneously erupt in applause, I will thank you. But here we go. Ready? Our homes and our phones, our pets and our jets, our heaters and our beaters, our water, our daughters and everything and sons they put on, and our packs and our snacks, our games and our frames, our paste and our waste, our light and sight, our stuffy nose and our clothes and our wheels and our meals. Everything depends on energy. Thank you. I had to practice that. The guy on the plane was weirding out, but I got it. Anyway. Everything. Not gasoline and electricity. Everything. Okay, no energy. We are hungry and naked in the dirt. And it turns out there are a lot of people in the world today that are hungry and naked in the dirt. They don't have these basic things: light, food, shelter, okay, clothing. And I've met a lot of them. I've been in 60 countries. I've been fortunate. So there they are, color-coded by number of visits. And I met a lot of people. When we were filming our second film, Switch On energy poverty, I met this grandfather, he's about my age, in Ethiopia. And he literally had tears in his eyes as he told me his kids and grandkids, those are some of them, had just come out of the bush and they were in school for the very first time. They'd never been in school. And neither had he, of course. If we head over to Nepal, we meet Sana Kanchi. She's cooking indoors with wood, like close to 3 billion people in the world still do today. Wood, dung, hay, biomass of different kinds. We go to the City Memorial Hospital, and tough scene. Kids are dying of pneumonia, and moms of cancer and cataracts and other things that indoor particulates give you. 3 million people every year die of breathing indoor smoke. 3 million. You know how many COVID-19 killed in 2020? 3 million. Shut down the whole global economy for that. This happens every year. Okay. Come back to Africa, we come to Ethiopia, lights hanging from a church which doubles as a school, and these kids are coming home from school in their uniforms over mounds of polluted water and garbage. This is Kibra, one of the large slums outside of Nairobi. And you see this over and over. Again, education is a common theme. Go to Vietnam, and here's Than brings her crippled son on that plank on her back every day so he can get into a school. Over and over, parents are trying to make sure this happens for their kids around the world. India, some of the most severe poverty I've ever seen, and severe wealth. Huge disparity in a very highly populated country. And then you come back to the Western Hemisphere to Colombia. We brought first solar there, installed it over 8 days and filmed it. You can see the array on the left. That's about half of what you'd put on one house here. Powered up those 7 mud huts with thatch roofs for lights, and a ceiling fan in the community center, and 1 refrigerator freezer for some vaccines. The kids there, and this is the Arwako village of Gunchukwa, indigenous village. These kids, about half of them will die before they become adults of things that won't kill us, a tooth infection or dysentery. They don't have modern medicines. That last night, we turned on the lights. I was with the chief, or the mamo, they call them. They'd never seen each other at night in their own village except over a fire. We had put up a pole that they carved in the center of town. It's a remarkably powerful moment. Okay. So here you have the world, and you can start to see how the world is. Look, there's 3 kinds of people in the world. Those who are good at math and those who aren't. So which of the 3 are you? We're going to do some simple little arithmetic here. This is the kilowatt hour consumption of a human being in some African nations, and we filmed in Ethiopia and Kenya. And here's my fridge. Okay. 9 times more electricity than a person each year that lives in Ethiopia, and 3 times in a Kenyan. How many of you have 2 fridges in your home? Put them up. Maybe even 3, so 20 to 30 times more just for your refrigeration than a human being. That's energy poverty. That's what it looks like. I'm not going to talk much about environmental social governance. It's taken on a whole new life of its own in the wealthy world. But in the rest of the world, it really means something. Environment, how about some clean water, clean air I can breathe, or soil to plant in? Social, a school, maybe access to some health care. Governance, get me out from under this autocrat so I have a voice. Any kind of voice, okay? It means something globally to the world. And if you look at this, then severe poverty across the bottom, economic poverty, and access to electricity on the Y or left axis. Africa, over 1 billion people, not electrified much, severe poverty. There are parts that are, don't get me wrong, but in the aggregate. Asia, a lot more people today, a little more electrified, a little less severe poverty. And then Latin America, moving up that curve. And you see this relationship. It plays out. The access to energy, electricity, starts to allow you to lift yourself from poverty. As we look to the future, Latin America continues to grow a little bit and moves off the graph. Asia gets a little bigger, more electrified, and Africa doubles in population, more electrification. More people, more electrification, the demand for energy in the world goes up for quite some time. You can't see any other way around it unless we have major human disasters, which none of us want, okay? 75% of the world live here, 3 out of 4. Africa, Asia, Latin America, and growing faster than the rest of the world, 3 out of 4. Now it's quiz time. They didn't tell you you're gonna have a quiz. There's 5 questions, and if you don't pass all of them, you don't get to leave, and I'm gonna talk to you all night long. It's the honor system. There are 5 questions. The teachers who get the most right, I've made a donation, and you're going to get money. So, it's the honor system, but now I've bribed you to get. Anyway, so think about these things, and we'll answer them. The answers are going to pop up right after. What percentage of the global population live in some level of energy poverty? What percentage? Here are your choices. Some level of global energy poverty. All right, so let's look at the data. This is a map of global income. Reds and yellows are severely poor, about $3 to $4 a day. And then on up to the rich world in blue. These are the least livable cities on the planet by an index that includes lots of parameters. Look where they are, where it's poor. And here are your most livable cities, the blue ones. Look where they are, where it's rich. Not a surprise. As you start to think about the emerging economies and the reds and the yellows, they're everywhere, severe poverty, but it's focused subequatorially, deep poverty. They need something affordable just to get started. Affordable energy, start to lift themselves up. The developing nations in the pinks and more in the reds, Latin America, Eastern Europe, et cetera, they've got energy, but it's not secure. It comes and goes a lot. Very unreliable, unpredictably. They need reliable energy. Okay. And then the rich world, us, the blues, at not many paces when you really start to look at it. And we want climate security. We want it clean. Okay. There are big differences, aren't there, around the world? And what's driving human thought? Well, what does clean mean? When we say it these days here, it's usually talking about the atmosphere, but not everywhere. The cleanest air in the world is where it's green and yellow. Where is it? Where it's rich. The dirtiest air is red. Where is that? Where it's poor. Different priorities. Poor countries can't afford to clean up the local environment. They're spending their money trying to do other things. Over and over, we see that relationship. As these things come together, we realize that security of energy varies tremendously around the globe. The circumstances vary by government type and economic system, educational levels, resource base, et cetera. All right. 60% of the world, some level of energy poverty today. More than. It's remarkable. I put out a piece in The Hill a little while ago, World's Road Out of Poverty is paid by energy and plenty of it. We need a lot of energy to be able to do that. I called this piece, actually, when I submitted it, editors write the headline, by the way, not the author of all, the author. I called it Net Zero Poverty. Start to think about what it means if we could get rid of poverty in the world and all the impacts that would have. So it's a paradox. Energy won't end poverty, but we can't get out of poverty without energy. This is one of the world's great dilemmas. Providing energy. It's time to power the people. Probably the most important challenge the world faces today because it has so many other positive impacts. So let's talk about secure energy. We got to strive to be completely factual, sure, but also factually complete. I testified Senator Manchin's first climate hearing a couple years ago now, and I said this, what is factually complete? What does that mean? Well, that's hard. So let's talk about some things. We used to cook indoors, heat ourselves 1,000 years ago, humans. And the first form of energy is the sun. It grew the hay that drove our vehicles. They hauled their own food. Okay. Wind, we captured the motion of wind way long time ago, and water as well in mills, and did useful things with it, built bigger dams, and then we killed whales to get their oil and light our homes. This is kind of old energy. And then coal came along. Nature had condensed plants and made it very dense. And burn it, boil water, make steam, turn a turbine, run a generator, and make electricity. That changed the world, at least the modern world. And then we found liquid hydrocarbons right here in this basin. Been around a long time. We refined those and put them in our vehicles because they're very dense. And then methane came along, and finally nuclear. So why am I showing you this progression from left to right? Well, it's a really important concept. It's called energy density. Through time, energy has gotten denser. Not a little bit, hundreds of times denser per unit something, volume, weight. I'm doing it by area here, surface power density. Hundreds of times denser as we go left to right. It drives modern societies. Okay. It's allowed us to come into big populated cities and regions of the world. Energy density. We have names for this stuff. Renewable, thermal, stuff on the left. Clean and dirty. How many of you teach those terms? Clean and dirty. A little judgmental, maybe. Industry has its own, intermittent and reliable. A little judgmental. Depends on your perspective. Weather dependent and firm, right? What we're really talking about here is electrons and molecules. The stuff on the left mostly makes electricity. You can burn molecules to make the heat to make electricity, but you have to use molecules for other things too, like cement and steel. It takes a tremendous amount of heat to make these things. Really hard to do with electricity. Ammonia, for fertilizers, plastics. These are molecules. You're not going to electrify them. They're molecules. All right, so the world needs electricity and we need molecules. We have to have both. The concept of electrify everything is a fun one, but it's not going to happen. We need molecules, okay? So the big chill in Texas, completely factual, factually complete. You've probably heard about it 2 years ago. It was a mess, really cold. It got below freezing, highs and lows for 2 weeks in Texas. We're not ready for that kind of thing there. Now, you heard natural gas failed. These blackouts for 5, almost 6 days, but it was really cold for 5 or 6 days before that time. So there we have the cold window. And these are the different fuels that make electricity in Texas. February 8, I'm showing you the megawatt hours in a normal winter time, and then it went way up the average for those days because we had our heaters cranking. And then it fell some and we had blackouts because we couldn't meet the demand, and then it went back to normal. So you will have heard during this very cold time that natural gas failed. Everybody published that, failed Texas. Well, let's look at the data. Here's nuclear. We have 4 reactors in Texas. One of them froze during the blackout. The circulating pump froze, so it fell 14% from when it was cranking at 5,100 megawatts. Here's coal, chattery as per usual, and then cranking during the very cold, and then some coal piles froze. It fell 10%, 9 to 10% during the blackouts. Couldn't get the coal into the burners. Solar we don't use much in the wintertime. Most people don't. Days are short, it's cloudy, low on the horizon, the sun, physics matters to solar efficiency. So it went from not much to nothing, 33% down. Here's wind. We have a lot of wind in Texas, more than any state by a bunch. And it went from 12 to, it fell 55% during the blackout. A lot of turbines froze up. So everything so far is down, and here's gas. Gas went from here, 40%, there's what you read, 40% during the blackouts. Gas fell 40%, completely factual, it did. So it caused the blackouts. Interesting, because it went up about from 12,000 to 33,000 day on day, covering everything else for 6 days until it couldn't keep up and some gas lines froze. And it fell 40%, but it was still 230% up from normal. So it matters how you look at data, doesn't it? Completely factual, factually complete. There's your data. What do you think? Nothing worked perfectly in this. Mr. Bloomberg in January of this year published a piece called Winter Blackouts Highlight the Need for Clean Energy. He loves that word. Access to solar is an expensive and dangerous proposition to deny access to it. You can publish things in Bloomberg when you're Bloomberg. Who's going to tell you, hey, Michael, we reject your op-ed? No, he can write whatever he wants, whenever he wants. So he puts this out in January. A week later, I was speaking in Colorado. Colorado had its own big chill. About 3 days, it got really cold. Here's the power fuels in Colorado, hydro Zippo in the wintertime. A little bit of solar when it's sunny, not at night. Here's the wind. Here's coal. Here's gas. Okay? So thermal energy, it isn't perfect, but it's there. You can burn things when it's really cold and generate electricity still. Point being, portfolios matter. We've got to have a lot of different things. If we start legislating away and mandating things away, it doesn't work very well. We'll talk more about that in just a second. Quiz time. Number 3, how you doing? Anybody 2 for 2 yet? Which sources of primary energy have decreased since 1965?
We only have one.
Oh, we only had one?
Yes. You're fast.
See, you're listening. You're listening. Number 2. Sorry, I'm jumping ahead. All the teachers. No, we haven't. Which sources have gone down since 1965? Primary energy. Which of these have decreased globally since 1965, 60 years ago? Here's the data. Oh, sorry. Biomass is what you burn in your homes to cook and convert to biofuels like corn, ethanol, and other things. All right. So my slides are color-coded. Gray is coal, green is oil, red is gas. Nuclear, hydro in blue, solar, wind in yellow, and geothermal in green. Always. So you can keep track of the colors. So here we go. This is the global energy production from coal and oil. It's still going up. It's really dense, but it makes a lot of CO2 when we burn it. Okay. Here's natural gas in red, nuclear. They're going up, gas a lot, nuclear's still going up. They're very dense. They don't make as much CO2. For climate reasons, better. And then here's hydro growing still, solar, wind, and other things are growing. They're not dense, but they don't make much CO2. So trade-offs, pros and cons of different forms of energy. Here's the Great Recession of '09. When the world goes into recession, we consume less energy. Economies are kind of shutting down. So you see the dimple there for '09, and here's the COVID dimple, the Great Forced Recession that we put on the world in order to protect ourselves. And I heard it was structural. Many people said, we'll never consume as much energy. Things have changed. We're already consuming more energy than before COVID. It took 2 years, okay? So there's the COVID dimple. We consume more coal and oil in the world than everything else combined today, by a lot, still, okay? That's the data. No source of energy has gone down. Not even hay. We use more hay than we've ever used. There are more animals, more people. We're doing more with it. Nothing. We just keep adding energy. Wedges on the top, okay? It's completely factual that solar and wind are the fastest growing forms of energy. They're growing exponentially. There's the data. It's remarkable. The price at the generation plant, the panel or the turbine, has come way down. Growing exponentially, you might teach this, fastest growing. What would make it factually complete? What percentage? The scale. So let's scale them the same. It's there in the data. They don't look as exponential when you put it all together. They represent about 10% of the growth in energy demand in that time period since they started. About 10% of the growth, not the base. Okay? We just consume so much energy, and we're growing. Scale is a remarkable thing. This is Arnold Schwarzenegger. Remember Conan the Barbarian? He's a big guy, right? Or he was. Big, strong guy. Until you look at him next to Wilt Chamberlain and Andre the Giant, who are in the film. Arnold looks kind of little. Scale. Scale matters. Do you know what this is? For those in the front, those are big power line towers going across this. Let's zoom in just a little bit. You know yet? A little more zoom. Can you see it? They're bicycles. Those are bicycles. It's a bicycle graveyard in China. It's incredible. It illustrates scale and the challenge of recycling. We can recycle anything, but we don't because it's more expensive. It's easier and cheaper to make things new. So it's incredible when you start to think about the scale of humans. By region, we see energy consumption, same data, but color-coded differently now. North America and the rich world have been flat in our energy consumption, doubled our economies, and here's Asia. Left to right, here's the rest of the world energy. Remember, 3 out of 4 people live here, and it's growing. Look at Asia left to right. None to more than the rest of the world combined. Remarkable growth in that amount of time in energy consumption. Just China, there's China's coal, and here's the rest of China's energy. Not power generation. Electricity is only about 20% of energy consumption. 80% is other things. This is total energy. More coal than everything else combined in China, by policy. No COVID dip in China. Nothing went down. China's coal power building plans are at a frenzied pace. When you zoom in, you see 20 gigawatts. A big coal power plant, a big one, is about 600 megawatts to 1 gigawatt. This is in a quarter. That's more than one big coal power plant a week still being built to power. And you say, wow, well, we did it. US did it, Germany did it, the UK did it, China's doing it. We're developing on coal. Now, when you look at India, I'm going to lay India right on top. Here we go. And you can see the COVID dip in India. India passed China in population in April this year. First time in centuries China hasn't been the most populated nation on earth. The big difference energetically is India consumes, watch close, a quarter of the energy that China does today. Just 25%. More people. So basically per capita energy is a quarter of what it is in China today. The GDP in China, there it is. Look at the growth since 1990. And look where India is, about a fifth of China per capita GDP. What does India want to do? What does Mr. Modi want to do? Compete with Mr. Xi and grow. So let's slide India to the left, a quarter of a century. Watch close. Here we go. Look familiar? They're right where China was. If they do what China did with coal, game over climate. Done. It's done. It's just going to overwhelm everything atmospherically. They could do other things, nuclear, natural gas, solar wind, some dams, etc., some mix. But it's a big challenge. And Mr. Modi has said pretty clearly, climate won't compromise energy security here. Fueled by coal, fastest growth in 33 years. We did it. The UK did it. Germany did it. China's doing it. India's going to do it. Maybe. We'll see. Coal consumption in the world has come down in the rich world by more than half. There's the data. We've cut it in half, and it's still going down. There's Asia, and here's the rest of the world. None. So coal. And it's not just China. Bangladesh, Pakistan is going to quadruple their coal. Bangladesh is going toward coal, away from renewables. It's an Asian story today, coal is. Affordable and reliable. Empowering things there. Except if you're Germany and Mr. Putin cuts off your gas. Then it becomes a German story. What did Germany do? Increase coal by 15% last year. And they shut down the rest of their nuclear power plants. Climate scientists are aghast. So are energy scientists. What? Is it about climate, Germany? Say it is. But you just shut down your zero emissions plants and you're burning coal. Not about it. Energy security drives. It drives every political leader. Regardless of what we say, secure energy underpins healthy economies, allows us to invest in the environment. This is a really important sequence. Look at actions. So when you look at annual gas against coal, here comes the natural gas at the same scale in the world. It's growing very quickly. It's gone from 39% gas to coal to 91%. Gas will pass coal soon. And it's every geopolitical region, look at the right, is increasing gas. It's not just an Asian story, it's a global story. And this is a good thing. Not a perfect thing for climate by any means, but for SOx and NOx and mercury, the other particulates, the stuff that coal produces when you make electricity and other stuff, gas is much better than that. So we're seeing that change. It's a global story. So let's talk about some energy resources. The nuclear builds. In this country, we built over 100 nuclear reactors in the 60s and 70s. This is how long it took to build each one. They're all shown here. And then 3 Mile Island happened. And Jane Fonda's film, The China Syndrome, and we stopped. Boom. Scared of nuclear. We stopped building them. France kept building them. 3 Mile Island wasn't there, but Chernobyl was. And that slowed France down. They had built most of what they needed. And then Korea kept building. And then Fukushima Daiichi happened, and they kind of stopped, and And China said, whatever. You know. So you take away the US and you take away France, Korea and China, look who's building nuclear today. You hear that nuclear isn't happening. Oh, it is. These are big reactors being built, 50 in China, and they've got 100 more on the books. Good for China. No emissions, dense, cheap once built. The electron is very cheap out of those nuclear reactors. It's an Asian story, though, nuclear. It might change with small modular reactors. I'm happy to talk about that during discussion if you want to. What are they? What are small modular reactors? How could that change? What question is this, the third one? Okay, number 3. What percentage of current U.S. oil and gas production comes from shale? You've heard about shale oil and shale gas. What percentage of today's production comes from shale? By the way, none in the Illinois basin, I understand, is from shale. The source rocks are, but not producing them. So here's natural gas production in the country. The Barnett and the Fayetteville were the big shale gas basins. Well, the Antrim was first. But Barnett and Fayetteville led, and they've peaked and they've rolled over now in their production. This is back to January of 2007. So not that long ago, 16 years. Here's the Haynesville down in Louisiana and Texas, and it's had a renaissance. Now I scale those down and put the Marcellus and Utica on, Ohio and Pennsylvania, West Virginia. And you can see shale gas production continues to increase in the country, but not in every basin, overall. And then gas comes from shale oil basins as well. Oil is associated with gas, produce a lot of gas there, and here's your conventional reservoirs. So overall, our gas production is growing in this country steadily, but not everywhere. There are signs of worry and concern about continuing to be able to increase that production curve. Oil production is a similar story. Here's the shale oil, Bakken and Eagle Ford, North Dakota and Texas. Here's West Texas, added a lot. You can see the big COVID dip there in 20. And there's conventional oil, Illinois and other basins. So still increasing after COVID, but not everywhere. So what percentage? We've gone from 5% shale oil to over 60%. And same with gas, which led. It's incredible. One of the biggest changes in energy terms anywhere in the world. An incredible change, but look at the right side. Look at the data, educators and scientists. It's starting to flatten, isn't it? We may not be able to increase that much longer. It's going to take investment, public acceptance. Don't have either of those things right now. 60% from shale. What happened as a result of that? The price of natural gas here used to be really volatile. Pre-Great Recession, pre-09, 15 bucks, $3 all over the board. You didn't know what you were going to pay, and then bam, it leveled out, $3 to $4. Shale gas production doubled in that time. It's pure, that's correlation in this case is causative. The reason price leveled out is because we produced a lot of gas from shale. It saved the Obama administration from the Great Recession, made energy really cheap here. Trump rode the wave, and we're in the next administration now. So there it sits. But we still don't like gas in some places in the country. I mean, I took this picture in Aspen. Do you have these things? You sit outside, chilly night, turn on the propane tank, heat the atmosphere directly, cut out the middleman, just do it. I know they're passionate about climate change in Aspen because on the propane tank it says, no global warming. It was right there for us all to see. Energy irony, alive and well. In fact, I spoke in California twice last year. How many of these things are there? There are at least 10 in this picture. We're in short sleeves. It wasn't even chilly. California is passionately against fossil fuels. Do they know propane is gas? Berkeley, first city, cut off the gas hookups. New York City followed. A lot of others did too, some in Colorado. And then the court got involved earlier this year and said, no, that's illegal. According to a 75 federal law, we'll see what happens. Optionality, mandating away certain choices. Markets don't favor that very well. Now, if you look at gas globally, North America consumes more gas than anywhere else. Asia follows. This is consumption. I'm going to show production now on top of that. There's the production of gas in those regions. There's only 2 regions in the world that consume more than they produce. Asia and Europe. really important. They don't have as much as they need. Here's the reserves. This is what's producible at today's price and technology. North America went up a little. Russia and the Middle East dominate, okay? Gas, and there's the rest of the world. Kind of a plateau maybe, we're not growing our reserves. Look at Europe and Asia. Not much. Who imports gas? Liquefied natural gas is the way we move it around the world on boats. Who imports it? Europe and Asia. They're the ones who need it. They don't have it. Russian pipeline that got cut off. They need options to gas. Gas is a big fuel for power generation, among many other things. So Europe, by design, has decided to cut down on coal and gas and nuclear, hydro, and add solar and wind. It's now up to about 1/3 of their generation from solar and wind. Some would say Europe is leading. In that realm, I guess if you count it by how much solar and wind you have, they are. How's it working for them? And this is policy, by the way. This isn't Ukraine. This is back to 2010. This is policy. You can't, Ukraine exacerbated it, but it's policy. Well, here's the cost of electricity in Europe last summer, 60 cents a kilowatt hour. Anybody know what you pay? How much? 14.5 cents, which is a little higher than we pay in Texas even with wind. It's like 12 to 14 in the US. California is 2-3 times that. 60 cents. That's 400% more than you pay. 400%. You can't afford this if you're a business owner. You're competing on a global market. Your energy costs are 400% more. And that's policy. You will hear and teach maybe solar and wind are cheaper now or as cheap as coal and gas. Make sure you know what you're saying when you say that. This is the levelized cost of electricity, the LCOE. It's a Lazard number. That's at the plant gate. How much does it cost to produce it right there when it comes out of the turbine, the panel, the gas plant, the coal plant? Then I have to take that electron to a consumer. The base load or the dispatchable ones, boop, off it goes. The intermittent ones, I have to have something there to back it up. That backup, that reliability is expensive. That's why it's so much more money. It's redundant. It sits and waits until it's needed. Cloudy, not windy, night, okay. So that's what makes it expensive. This is a really important distinction, and we're not being clear to our public and to our politicians about it. So cracks are emerging in Europe's united front to battle climate. Macron called for green pause. I was in Paris lecturing when that happened. The economist of all, expensive energy may have killed more Europeans than COVID last winter. And you think, really? Yeah, really. Heat and eat as you get the lowest end of the economic spectrum. Literally have to make choices about some of these things. Crippling energy forced Europe's factories to go dark. BMW to move from the UK to China. The energy crisis chips away at Europe's industrial might. It's happening. And yet we're still pointing a lot of fingers. And this is a very interesting phenomenon. We're following this. California and New York are leading the US toward a Europe strategy. Industry needs secure energy. I'm speaking tomorrow at lunch in Kansas City to a big group of industrial CEOs. They want to know about these things. Okay. Oil, same story. Here's the consumption, here's the production. There's only 2 regions in the world that consume more oil than they produce by a lot, Europe and Asia. Here's the reserves. Gone up in North America with shale, Middle East overwhelms everybody, Latin America not doing bad. Look at Europe and Asia's oil reserves. They need options to oil. Oil mostly for transportation. Enter the electric vehicle. It says it on the license plate, Electrons. A nice BMW EV. It's charging with this electric charger running on diesel. These are diesel generators making electricity to charge a car. You can't make it up anymore. And it's kind of happening globally. Let's look at the diesel of the real world. Here's the percent share of EVs, up to 18% last year. Now an EV includes a scooter, and electric scooters, motorcycles, all electric vehicles, but still 18%. Where? Where are they being sold? Who needs them? Say it together. China and Europe. So here's China, here's Europe, here's the US EVs, and all the rest of the world combined. 85% of EVs are in China, or Asia and Europe, okay? And that's okay. They need those things. Is it a climate driver? 40 million to date, 40 million sold. The ones in China and Asia are charged with what? Coal. That's where they make their electricity. So there's not a great CO2 trade-off here when you start to think about it. Now, to charge the EVs, and they're growing exponentially, by the way, 40 million total. It's remarkable growth. We're going to need some chargers. Now, I don't know how many. Look, I didn't have any accurate numbers, so I just made this one up. Studies have shown accurate numbers aren't any more useful than ones you make up. How many studies showed that? 87. All right, perfect. Let's make up a number. All right, we're gonna charge half the world's electrify half the world's vehicle fleet by 2040. I have no idea where that came from, but that's the target, half by 2040. Well, it's gonna take 300 million chargers, connectors to do that from what we have today, because we've got to go from 40 million to 700 million, which is half of 1.4 billion. That's static. That's today's vehicle number. It's gonna grow. I'm just using it to make the math easy. Now, have you seen a Tesla this way? A Tesla S, this is the big sedan. Those are the batteries. How many are in it? 7,000. One car. Each one bigger than your cell phone. It's a lot of batteries. A lot of car. They're a blast to drive. Motor's very efficient. Torque is incredible. 7,000, let's use 5,000, smaller than a Tesla S, times 700 million cars is 3.5 trillion batteries. New batteries, trillion. Okay. We've got tens of billions a day for all of our gadgets. Trillion. And they wear out. We got to make them again. So we got to start to do some arithmetic. Germans think twice about EVs. Auto execs appear to be cooling off on EVs. Electric cars aren't viable, the Kia boss said. Ford says EV is losing billions and wants to call it a startup. Italy leads the revolt against, this is just a couple weeks ago, electric vehicle. And just today, on the flight, I grabbed this. Lordstown Motors files for bankruptcy, sues Foxconn. This is your Ohio-based electric truck company. Just filed for bankruptcy today. You might hear EVs are all the thing happening, but let's keep in mind where they are and some of those challenges with them. It turns out, look at the metals on the right, it takes a lot of metal to make an electric vehicle, not the car, that's about the same. The battery, 700% more than a combustion engine. And it turns out for solar and wind, it takes about 600% more metals than for coal and gas. And this isn't judgment. This is physics. Low density takes more stuff to collect it. It has benefits. There are pros and cons. There are trade-offs. But we've got to be thoughtful about what those are. Large-scale mining is on the way, and I'm a geologist, and I don't mind mining. Doesn't bug me a bit. How many think mining is clean? Put up the hands. Cleaner than it was in rich countries, right? Depends on where it's done. So this is the projected global waste by 2050 from the solar and wind, and if you were to use nuclear to generate the same amount of electricity. Lithium-ion batteries. John Goodenough just died this week. He's at UT, a colleague. He's died at 100 years old, the Nobel laureate who invented the lithium-ion battery, one of the main inventors. So here's lithium, what we produce, and this is what we are forecasting we will produce. A lot of it's recycled supply, which we don't do today, and unfinanced projects. And this is the demand for lithium based on the 700 million vehicles, far exceeds supply, which makes it expensive. Supply, demand, volatile price, commodities. You've seen lithium mining. This is in South America. Is it green? I don't know. You know, the batteries don't have emissions at the car. That's a good thing. But there are other impacts, and they come from somewhere. Here's all the countries that produce key things. Oil and gas, the US, these are the top 3 producers for each of these things. The US leads in oil and gas so far. Here's copper, nickel, cobalt, rare earths, and lithium, really important metals in the solar, wind, and battery game. There's your countries. Who in the world this is producing, who processes these metals? That's who controls the supply chains. Where is it processed? Watch close. China, 80%. Brilliant. Belt and Roads Initiative, even initiatives before that, bought up the resource and process all these metals. They control the supply chains for solar, wind, and batteries. Who needs electric vehicles? China. Who needs options to gas for power? Okay, so we start to put these things together, and it makes good economic sense. China controls the supply chains. U.S.-China relations, they matter a lot. I go all over the world and people say, how are your relations? Used to be U.S.-Russia, still kind of is, but now it's U.S.-China. How are you guys doing? It matters to all the world. So optionality in transportation. Electrify smaller vehicles. You're not hauling as much weight in the battery. Cities, no emissions, quiet. If you haven't plugged, not everybody does, charge it at night. The bigger the vehicle gets, the more weight you're hauling in that battery. So you start to look at other things, fuel cells and CNG, liquids. And as you get larger, that jet I'm going to fly on tomorrow, liquids. Okay, we need the density in those wings to get us anywhere. So nonetheless, Colorado, proud Coloradans, Tesla, no oil, no tires. No plastic, no electronics. I mean, really? No oil? And John Hickenlooper is a geologist. He's a good friend of mine. He was mayor, then governor, now he's senator from Colorado. He's the only scientist in the Senate of 100. How's the mining going in Colorado, Senator? Not. We're not increasing mining in the U.S. We're not. It should say, I love mining. Colorado's a proud mining state. Let's ramp it up, produce the things we need for solar, wind, and batteries. But we're not. Number of states proposing EV mandates grows. Given all this, we're still mandating electric vehicles by a date certain. It's incredible to me. I wrote a piece in Fortune not long ago, optionality. We need options. Eliminating options is a terrible idea for markets. It doesn't work. We're not that smart, for one thing. We don't know. So you got to keep options in there. Number 4, what forms, it is number 4, right? What forms of primary energy are renewable? Select all that apply. What would you teach? Okay, the part where you don't like me. Life cycle impacts. Biomass on the left, all the way over to nuclear on the right, more dense. You've seen it already. Well, to make bio things, you got to grow it, process it, or refine it, or convert it, move it to where it needs to be, and then we burn it. I mean, ethanol is in our car is a liquid, and we're converting carbohydrates to hydrocarbons. Okay, that's what we're doing. We burn them. Solar, wind, batteries, dams, we mine the stuff, we manufacture the things, we deploy them, we move the electrons or other forms of energy that they make. And then what happens when they wear out? I heard it. And now California, look, solar, this is the Guardian, not exactly a right-leaning thing. How solar farms took over the California desert. An oasis has become a Dead Sea. There's starting to be a lot of resistance to this. Have you seen what happens to wind turbines? The blades. This is Wyoming. Big earth mover. That's 100 blades cut into thirds, being buried. They're inert, huge. 100 blades. Texas has 40,000 wind turbine blades. And they're wearing out. We're burying them. We don't recycle them. Is it green? What do we do with batteries when they wear out? Yeah, yep. So look, and oil and gas and coal, are you kidding? All these things. You got to mine for the metals, you manufacture the stuff, you drill for it, refine it, move it in various ways, and then we burn it and we dump the emissions into the atmosphere. Better in the rich countries than the poor. All these things come from the earth, get made into collectors of energy, and go back into the earth when they wear out or into the atmosphere, and we make them again. Nothing. Fossil fuels, solar and wind, nothing is renewable. We need to stop teaching this concept. I said it in a TED Talk last year. No renewable energy. It sounds good because the sun and the wind are there, but we don't put the sun in our cars. We have to put electricity in our cars, into a battery. So this is something we really got to think hard about. We can keep teaching that there's pretty energy and there's ugly energy. Teaching our kids right from the beginning, literally from the beginning. But I'm not sure it's helping them. Not sure it's going to help them solve the real challenges if they think of it as binary, clean, dirty, good, bad, believer, denier. It's not going to help them. So, college graduates' working preferences definitely wouldn't go to mining and oil and gas. Look at the overwhelming numbers, because that's what they've been taught. Definitely would go to healthcare, high tech, and arts. This is our U.S. students. That's what they've learned. Not so in Asia. Definitely would go to mining, oil, and gas. Middle East, Latin America. Okay. This is energy irony. We want solar, wind, and batteries. We don't like those industries. We wouldn't work in them. It's one of the great challenges. So let's come to climate. Read the book Factfulness if you haven't. It's a wonderful read. 10 Reasons Why You're Wrong About the World. They're better than you think. Hans Rosling. Medical doctor, he passed away. Data have to be used to tell the truth, not to call to action, no matter how noble the intentions. Intentions are great, but I haven't shown this in years, okay? But I'm going to just kind of set the Earth history here. We go back 500 million years. This is a log scale across the bottom. This is warming and cooling cycles of our planet over about 400 million years. This is 13 degrees warmer than the baseline today, and big time. Now you carve off an equivalent amount of time on this log scale and show the next 50 million years, and you see one of those really hot down to cooling cycles. Then we carve off another 5 million years, and you start to see a bunch of them. Overall, we're getting cooler in the world, but coming up and down. Now we carve off 1 million years, and we see a bunch of these cycles, warmer, colder. These are glacial interglacials. Every time it's down here, there's ice in Michigan, and every time it's up there, it melts way back. It's warm for about 20,000 years. It's cold for about 80,000 years in each of these cycles. They're called Milankovitch cycles. We understand why they happen. And here's the last one, the 20,000 years. We've come out of a glacial period into an interglacial. The last 12,000 years have been pretty nice around here. Stone Age, Bronze Age, all the development of modern humans has happened in that little bit of time. So there we carve off 1,000 years, and these are all the different models of temperature from the best modelers, and that blue line is the one they put in there of the average. Now they're great modelers, but there's quite a bit of spread on these things. It isn't just a tight little forecast, and I'm sure everybody understands that. So you carve off the last 50 years, and this is what we hear about. It's warming. That's the black line. That's the actual data. That's real. And here are the different forecasts of what could happen. Most people are down in this RCP 4 or 5 now, 1.7 to 3.2 degrees C. About 2 degrees C is probably where we're going to end up. That sits right here, 2 degrees. I'm going to lay that back on this picture. I have a lot of times on airplanes, that's how I make these graphics. So they're for your pleasure. It would take you days to digest all this. But it's a lot warmer than now, 2 degrees C for sure. Look at that. But let's take a look at it on the scale here now. And yeah, it goes up in 2050, 2 degrees, which sits right about there. That's one of these cycles. Yeah, definitely warmer. We're forcing that. Is it out of sync with the last 4? Not really. They've peaked at that kind of level of warm the last 4 interglacial cycles. Just scale that back and you can see, compress those, there's your 2 degrees. And we see about 40 glacial cycles, 10 in the current one. About 50 of these in the last 5 million years, where ice was on Michigan. Okay? So context matters a lot. As we say, it's the warmest time in the Earth's history. Well, no, it's not. People misunderstand that to mean ever. And since we've been measuring it about 100 and something years. Not in Earth's history. We have lots of proxies for that. So this is kind of the data that we set things in. Contrast that quickly to the most important problem by political party. I just put this first time I've showed this. Republicans, independents, and Democrats. Most important problem, government. Everybody agrees, you know? Okay, how about the economy? Everybody agrees. Inflation, boom. Unifying the country. Crime and violence. All 3 parties agree on those 5 things. These are huge issues. They don't agree on how to address them necessarily, but I'm hopeful we have the same issues. The Republicans, independents agree on 2 more, immigration and the federal budget deficit. Republicans and Democrats agree on poverty and homelessness. The independents and Democrats on guns and gun control. I mean, we agree on a lot of stuff, 8 out of 10 issues. Republicans seem to focus on moral and ethical decline and energy. The Democrats on judicial systems, race relations, and abortion. And thankfully, the independents care about education and health care, you know, which won on the other lists. Huh? What's missing? Boom. Where's climate? It didn't make the top 10 for anybody. Who would have known? You'd think it would. We sure talk about it a lot. And it's a big issue. So is the land and the air and the water. And these things all work together. They're very interconnected. And you go out too far on one, you can hurt another one. Not easy, not simple. Here's the CO2 emissions on the planet since 1960. Kind of haven't changed. Here's the big climate conferences. We'll have another one this year. Draw your own conclusions. I know we're getting knowledge, but we haven't had a lot of impact yet on that trend. Not that the intentions aren't good. These guys had good intentions. They're putting in posts to keep people from parking next to the building. Okay. They forgot where they parked. All right. They're not getting out. Policy does this all the time. Policy posts. Oh, it didn't work. Oops, not going to remove it. I'll get crucified. You know, flip-flopper. We got to learn and let people adapt as we go forward. Last question. Asia emits more CO2 than the rest of the world combined. True or false? Here's the data. North America, we've been flat in our emissions for several decades, doubled the economy. I guess we pat ourselves on the back for that. Asia's gone way up, as we know, and the rest of the world just getting started. So indeed, Asia emits more CO2 than the rest of the world combined, barely, today. Why? Because Asia's bad. Bad Asia, look what they're doing. Why did they do this? Why is Asia emitting so much CO2? We know it's because they burn coal. Why? This is a really important graph. Above this red line, countries consume more stuff than they produce. And below it, they produce more. The United States, we make 5 billion tons of CO2 by burning fossil fuels every year. But we still consume more stuff than we make. Right? China makes 10 billion tons, twice us, from coal, but they produce more stuff than they consume. Most of the non-rich world, the non-OECD, the blue, are producers. Most of the rich world, the OECD, we're consumers. It's led by Europe and then us. We are saying, send us our stuff. You make it with coal cheap. Send it to me on an Amazon truck, one item at a time. Give me a Twinkie to my door. It's awesome. How efficient. One Twinkie. What are we effectively saying to Asia when we say make our stuff? We're saying basically make our CO2. You put it up, we'll be green. Zero emissions. How many atmospheres are there in the world? One. This whole offsets game, countries, companies, states, buying my emissions credits, from who? This doesn't address climate change. It's hard to reduce emissions, the right tech, the right price, scale, timeframes. It's not easy. Some things that will do it. These are the big ones. Natural gas, nuclear replacing coal, lowers emissions. We've done it here. Doesn't get you perfect. Hydrogen, geothermal, hydrogen. Some of these things are just getting started, all right? But they have big potential. Carbon capture, direct air capture, nature. These are huge dialogues. The federal government is investing a bunch of money in these things right now. Solar, wind, and batteries. Where they work, where it's sunny and windy. Good piece of the puzzle. And finally, doing more with less, efficiency, conservation. These are the big wedges we can throw. Optionality, it varies all over the world. We don't have the same stuff. We can't judge and tell people what to do, set the goals, and it's got to make money. Shell has finally said it. You got to make money or they won't be around. So you got to figure out things to do to lower it that actually are profitable. Yet we still say if it's not solar, wind, and batteries, you're a denier or something. Okay? And I promise you go online, have these dialogues, you'll get that response. And I put solar in. I like solar, wind, and batteries. I'm going to drive around that gate, all right? I just am. I'm not going to stop. It's a piece of it, but you need the other parts in there too in order to really begin to reduce emissions, these other wedges. So this transition, here we sit on today's energy. And we know the energy transition is just a good jump to change, leave all coal and oil and gas behind, nuclear, and just do these other things, and we do it quick, right? That's what people think when they hear the word energy transition. Here's a guy, he's going to make a quick transition. Watch close. He's in flip-flops, okay? Let's agree on one thing. This is an idiot, all right? This is an idiot. If he doesn't land that, it's over. 100% failure doesn't work. Neither does that concept of a transition. It doesn't work. A transition, we've already learned we're adding every form of energy still. You've seen the data, plus emissions reduction. It's simple. Energy addition for a while more, plus emissions reduction. That's the transition. So here's a 30% solar wind case into the future. I ran this. There are an infinite number of shapes of these. Coal down, these are absolute terms. Oil starting to come down, gas up, nuclear up, everything else up a lot. This is the actual slope of energy demand in the past, and I round it over as we come into the middle of the century. Get more efficient, start to grow economies more efficiently. Total energy supply, according to the IEA Net Zero Emissions report 2 years ago, which drove the world's thinking and still does, said we're going to reduce coal, oil, and gas 400% by 2050. I went out to 2065. Bioenergy goes way up, and solar and wind go up 1,000%. They increase the population of the world, rightfully, in the economic growth. What happens when in the past, when you've grown the population and the economy, you use more energy? We can get more efficient, but they took it negative. This is the world's leading international energy agency, took it negative. I don't know how this happens. They explained 10% of it. Fatih Birol. That's it, though, not this other giant wedge of energy intensity. So look, people are using that as a roadmap. It's not. Some of the underlying assumptions are just way out there. We are increasing our energy consumption, for one. I put out a piece called The Road to Glasgow is Paved with Bad Assumptions. This came out right before Glasgow. So, come back to some kind of reality. Rolling over demand, here's the emissions from coal, oil, and gas in that future. start to see them rolling over. Our demand is here, so today we have a lot of emissions. In the future, we consume more energy with lower emissions. That's a good trend, but it doesn't get us to net zero. If you capture some of these, you get lower, but not to net zero. Net zero may not have to happen. If we can reduce them 60% or 70, net 70, that might not be so bad either, okay? This scares people. It scares your students. They see that much oil and gas and coal in the future. It's terrifying to them. They thought we were slamming the door on oil and gas and coal. The door is stuck. Okay. It's not going down, and I'm glad we need that energy. This is actually the runner-up of the last photo taken contest. All right. I'm going to show you the winner. Stay tuned. Here's the data. Let's just look at actual units. Let's look at it in a percentage, exact same data. There's the percentage left to right, same data. Look at the change. That was COVID, by the way. You can't even see it. That's actual data. Look at the change. Coal and oil down, cut in half percentage-wise. Gas and nuclear double. Solar and wind go up from 6 to 30%. Remarkable changes left to right. Why? Carbon, hydrocarbons, hydrogen, uranium, thorium, nuclear. This transition to more dense energy is happening. It will continue. Dispatchable energy, intermittent energy. The right side of this graph has a lot of optionality in it. The left doesn't. This is healthier. That's good. But if we take the gray and the green and the red away, it's not healthy anymore. No options. And they're not always blowing and shining. We need it to be reliable. That drives our economies. Optionality is needed for secure energy. A lot of oil and gas in that future for those of you in that business. Can you deliver it globally? Here's the biggest producing companies in the world. Look at them. Aramco leads, of course. I put the two Russians together, they're bigger than Aramco. I have to put the 5 big IOCs, international oil companies, together to get that big. And everybody else, look at them. How does it make you feel? You want to kill the industry? You start to cut off solar panel supply chains, we get upset. You start to be short of oil in the world, we go to war. We always have. And we aren't out of that phase yet, okay? So this worries me. Winner, last photo taken contest. Man, if you're gonna be stupid, you better be tough. And it's a bear, metaphorically. So let me wrap it up here. This is the world, you've seen it, our income. I'm gonna fade it into the world at night. Remarkable composite satellite image. Look where the lights are on, and look where they're off. Here's the energy mixes around the world. Same color scheme. Scale them to be proportional to consumption. Asia consumes half the world's energy today. You can see why the lights are off. There's no energy. Now, if you get rid of coal and oil, that's what's left. Some don't like natural gas, fossil fuel, or nuclear. Let's get rid of those. Some don't want to build dams environmentally. Get rid of the blue. What's left? 6%. Look geopolitically. Look. How's that look to you? Let's darken the world's light by 94%. Here we go. How's that look to you? I know it's a little dramatic, but how's it look? Does it look like the future? It looks like the past to me. Here's the future. In fact, we need more energy around the world. We need it for people who don't have anything: hunger, clothing, shelter, education, some health care. Women go for the wood. They cook indoors. They're not in the schools. They're differentially impacted negatively by energy poverty. Population is tied directly to education. Fertility rates are tied directly to education. Immigration and migration away from the autocrats, investing in the environment when you have a healthy economy, mitigating and adapting to climate change. These are the big issues. You bring all that stuff together, and you realize secure energy drives everything. It addresses many of these global challenges, and most of us don't have it today. So here's your themes. It's vital for humans, pros and cons, and drives decision makers, and a couple thoughts. There are trade-offs between these things. There are trade-offs, okay? Nothing is perfect. Energy poverty is very real. It's global and we got to address it. Get those students passionate about that. They will have an impact on that. The world needs electricity and molecules. All forms are increasing, okay? And they all impact the environment different ways. Businesses need affordable, reliable, resilient energy. That's what drives them. Coal and EVs are an Asian story, and they control the critical minerals there for EVs, solar, and wind. Markets favor energy optionality, not mandates. And the transition is adding and reducing these things. So my day job is here at the Bureau. We've got 250 folks doing a lot of research on these things, and consortia, and then night job, we started this 501c3 a while back and make a lot of films and educational materials. TED Talk, grab it, 17 minutes. Some of these things are in there. The PBS series, season 3 is gonna come out. We're in 100 million households now. World Channel picked it up, remarkably. So 250 channels are running this thing. 2 guests, don't agree on everything, high-level people, 25 minutes. We have real dialogue, civil, around these tough conversations. You can stream them. So aim your phones at that, like you would a food menu, and your phone will blow up. No, it's gonna take you somewhere when you click it. I'm gonna give you an assignment. Here's your assignment. I would like you each, I'm gonna click this in a second once you got it, to go out this year and give one talk on energy to 20 people. One talk on energy to 20 people. It can be your kids, your students, your church group, a scout troop, civic group, your family. Just one talk. And I'm gonna make all these slides available to you. Animated PowerPoint with my voice under them saying what I would say. You can pick the ones you like, modify them. The data are there. Have you got it? Did it work? Did it take you to our landing page? So I'm gonna click here. So you're gonna see this download, and you can just download the presentation, boom, and there it'll come to you, okay? One talk to 20 people. That's how this improves. We gotta start speaking as candidly as we can. So some final musings for you. Nobody owns the truth. I don't own the truth. We're seeking it, and we'll continue to. Science is a process. It's not an outcome. It's a process. Shaming is destructive. We need open civil dialogue. The competition between energy sources, enough, end it. We need them. Different things do different things. We need them all. The dual challenge, it's not simple, but it's solvable. So, thank you.